All right, we're sort of in the middle of it here with these spring games. They've been going on for a couple of weeks. They really started to ramp up this past weekend. I did a Clemson video the other day talking about their spring game, which was held this past Saturday. NC State had a spring game this past Saturday, which we may talk some about later in the week. And Auburn also held their spring game this past weekend. So we're going to talk a little bit about that spring game today, and then just sort of some of my thoughts on Auburn going forward. Now, second year under Hugh Freeze here, headed into 2024. But good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it is me, Uncle Lou, live on LouTube for you. The rumors are true. It is me here to talk to you today about Auburn football. Make sure you subscribe, hit the thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about Auburn, either their spring game or maybe what you think their chances are in 2024. But here's the thing with Auburn. I don't really feel much differently about Auburn heading into 2024 than I did in 2023. And here's what I mean. I still think Hugh Freeze is a massive upgrade over what Auburn had with Bryan Harsin. Is he an upgrade over what they had before that? I don't know. With the read option guy, the beep boop, we're going to find that out. Hugh Freeze had some success in the SEC in the past at Ole Miss. Of course, things ended on a rocky road, and he was basically fired with sort of the stuff that went on there. We're not going to get into all that. We spent plenty of time talking about all that. But my questions about Auburn heading into last year were not necessarily about the head coach, because I do think Hugh Freeze is, like I said, is a big upgrade over what they had with Bryan Harsin. The quarterback situation at Auburn, obviously the quarterback situation at any major program is going to be huge, right? Certain coaches, though, or really, I guess, certain offenses or offensive styles, certain philosophies, however you really want to word it, I believe are more dependent on really good quarterback play than others. And I think Hugh Freeze's offense falls into that category. I would put Tennessee in that category. So I'm not using this as a knock. I hope it's not I know we do a lot of trash talking around here. What I'm saying now, I'm not intending to come off as trash talk. Look, Southern Cal, Lincoln Riley, right? Like the quarterback-centric type of offenses. Whatever you think of Josh Heupel at Tennessee, good, bad, or indifferent, right? Quarterback play is extremely important to the success of what Tennessee does offensively. Now, again, I understand that quarterback's the most important position on the field for almost every single team in the country. But some offenses just are less quarterback dependent than others. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And when I look at Auburn and Hugh Freeze in particular, to me, it's very quarterback centric. He needs a quarterback that fully understands and grasps his system and offensive philosophy, and also has the ability and the tools to implement that in a game time type situation. Last year, I had major questions about whether or not they had anyone at the quarterback position who could do that. You had Payton Thorne, you had Robbie Ashford. There was a third guy, I think, that was kind of in the mix. And last year was probably the worst passing year that Auburn has seen. You'd probably have to go back to like the 80s when teams rarely threw the ball. It was really bad. I think there was a 4 or 5 game stretch during the season where Auburn was under 100 yards passing 3, 4, 5 games in a row, whatever it was. And that sort of lack of passing ability from Auburn's offense was reflected in their overall record. Now, I understand that, Auburn almost beat Georgia or had a lead on Georgia in the second half, and they almost beat Bama. But the reality is, when you get to the end of a season and the best thing that you have to talk about is games that you barely lost, then you really don't have anything to brag about. Auburn has got to find a way to take a massive step forward in the quarterback situation. Now, that's sort of my broad sort of umbrella opinion of Auburn under Hugh Freeze and what would need to happen for Auburn to get where Auburn fans would like them to get, which I'm assuming is potential for SEC titles. And now that we're in a 12-team playoff berths, I don't think Auburn under Hugh Freeze has any chance to achieve any of that without massive upgrades at the quarterback position going from 2023 to 2024. Now, that brings us to the spring game. and Auburn's offense and quarterback situation heading into 2024. It's not good. I'm extremely surprised they didn't go out and get another quarterback out of the transfer portal. They did that last year with Payton Thorne, and while he wasn't great, and I can put his stats up on the screen, Auburn played multiple quarterbacks last year under Hugh Freeze. Not a lot worked for them offensively. They tried various things, but if you look at Payton Thorne's stats here, he had less yards passing last year than any season other than his freshman year at Michigan State. You know, he was at Michigan State for 3 years, transferred to Auburn, as you can see here on the screen. Now, again, he split time. So some of that is why he had only 1,700 yards passing, but he was 162 for 265, a 61% completion percentage, which is not great in today's college football. Your upper echelon of quarterbacks are completing closer to 70% as opposed to 60%. And then the interceptions is unacceptable, especially considering the limited amount of time that he played. Now, you can see he played in all 13 games, but again, Auburn rotated quarterbacks in and out last year a lot. Now, Payton Thorne did play a lot, but 16 touchdowns to 10 interceptions is not great. Now, he can run the ball, and that's mandatory, really, under a Hugh Freeze offense. And if you look here, he did run for 515 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he has that part of the game down. He has that ability, and he showed that last year. 515 yards rushing from a quarterback is really, really good. If you want to just think about the perception of Jalen Milroe at Alabama, right? How many yards rushing did he have? It might surprise you. You want me to show you? You want me to look it up? Should I look it up live? We'll look. I hate to do this, but I guess we'll do it. But anyway, 515 yards rushing is a lot for a quarterback. I think we can all agree on that. And so here's Mildew. Here's our buddy Mildew. Of course, he can't throw the ball at all, but he did manage to run for 531 yards. I think a lot of people would be surprised to find out that Payton Thorne ran for as many yards as Mildew did. Now, Mildew had 1,000 more yards passing than Payton Thorne. Mildew also played more. He didn't get rotated in and out nearly as much. He sat out a game, the South Florida game, he got benched. But anyway, the point is not to knock Mildew. I'm trying to give Payton Thorne some credit here, believe it or not. He can run the ball. He can use his legs. However, he scares nobody with his arm. There's not a defense in the country. There's not a defensive coordinator in the country that's got Auburn on the schedule that is sitting around trying to figure out a way to slow down the passing ability of Payton Thorne. So that brings us, again, to Auburn's quarterback situation overall as a whole. They did not bring in another transfer. If you look at Auburn's quarterback situation this year, do I still have it pulled up? No, but they've got, like a redshirt sophomore that's never played. They've got a a sort of highly rated freshman, but I seriously doubt you're going to see him play. It looks like it's going to be Payton Thorne in 2024 for Auburn. So what do I think that means? I think you're going to get similar results. Now, I do think Auburn will be a little bit better offensively in 2024 than they were in 2023. Year 2 under the Hugh Freeze system, and more importantly, year 2 for Payton Thorne in the Hugh Freeze system. And I think that freshman wide receiver is going to play. He looked good in the spring game. Let's talk about the spring game, I guess, since that's kind of the point of reason why I'm making this video. 5 times Auburn went in the red zone. 5 times they failed to score. And look, disclaimer, every time you make a spring game video, I said this during the Clemson video, I realize this is a spring game and you cannot draw a straight line from what you see in the spring game to what you're going to see in the fall. I get that. I realize that. I understand that. However, spring game, scrimmage, practice, real game, week 1, group of 5 team, power 5 team, whatever you're playing. If you get in the red zone 5 times and get 5 field goals, that's not good under any circumstances. The good news is the field goal kicker appears to be really, really good, which is great news because it looks like Auburn's going to need him a lot. He kicked a game-winning field goal at the end in this spring game. I think it was a 58-yarder as time expired or whatever. And like a lot of teams, Auburn does not play a football game for their spring game, not in the traditional sense anyway. It's not, team A versus team B or like, white team versus blue team or whatever, like a lot of teams will do. It's just offense versus defense for Auburn. So the defense gets spotted, I believe, 27 points on the scoreboard, and the offense has 4 10-minute quarters to make that up, basically. And with a game-winning field goal, they ended up coming back to beat the defense. So I'm not going to get into the rules of Auburn's spring game. That's not the point. The point is Payton Thorne at quarterback is not going to take Auburn where Auburn fans want them to go this year. That's just my opinion. I didn't see anything from him in the spring game that changed my mind. He will have a better weapon on the outside with the wide receiver, Cam Coleman, the freshman wide receiver. I think he'll play, and I think he'll play a lot for two reasons. Number one, he's just really, really good. He would probably get on the field and contribute on almost any team in the SEC. But because Auburn really lacks playmakers at the wide receiver position, he's going to play early. He's going to play often, and I expect him to make some plays. He's a really, really talented wide receiver. Payton Thorne is just limited. He's just limited when it comes to throwing the ball. Maybe they go look somewhere in the portal when it opens back up after the spring here. They have another like 15-day portal window, whatever. But if you take Hugh Freeze at his word, he's not interested in doing that. He's sort of doing the whole, oh, we've got 4 quarterbacks we're comfortable with, and we can play any of them or all of them, and blah, 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 blah. It looks like it's going to be the Payton Thorne show. So I kind of feel the same coming out of the spring game about Auburn as I felt going in. I think they're going to be a better overall team than last year, just simply because of the fact that it's year 2 in Hugh Freeze's system. You add to that the recruiting class and the fact that I think some of those younger players are going to play. And I do think Payton Thorne will be slightly better throwing the ball than what we saw last year. I don't think the improvement will be significant enough to make that much of a noticeable difference, especially in terms of record. You look at Auburn last year, they were 6-6, right? 6-7 after a bowl loss to Maryland. So the easiest way, or the simplest way to judge progress is by overall record. Now, we all know that records or schedules vary from year to year, and that's definitely the case this year in the SEC, as they've added 2 new teams, Texas and Oklahoma. And there's no more divisions with the East and the West. So the schedules have been completely flipped on their head. Now, Auburn still plays Georgia every year, and Alabama, their 2 primary rivals. And those are 2 games they're likely to lose again. But 6-6 last year in the regular season, right? I think Auburn will be a better team in 2024 than they were in 2023. Will they have a better record? And those answers aren't always the same. A team can be better and have a worse record. Let's take a look at Auburn's schedule real quick. We've been through this before, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But you've got Alabama, A&M, Cal, and New Mexico to start the season. 3 games at home, 3 non-con games. 2 of them are lower classification schools with Alabama, A&M, and New Mexico. And then you've got the Power 5 matchup with Cal, who's actually in the ACC now, believe it or not. Auburn has got to win all 3 of these games. First of all, there's just losing to Alabama A&M is out of the question. That can't happen. That would be completely unacceptable, and I don't expect that to happen. Same thing with New Mexico. You got to get a win there. You absolutely have to get a win there against New Mexico. And then it comes down to the Cal game, and I think Auburn's a better team than Cal. Auburn should win all 3 of those games. If they don't, I think that is a horrible sign for the rest of the season for Auburn. But I would expect Auburn to be 3-0 coming out of those first 3 games. I can't say the same about the next 4. Arkansas, I'm up in the air on them. They lose KJ Jefferson. Sam Pittman appears to be hanging by a thread. A lot of coaching turnover there. It seems like Auburn's got to probably win this one too. It's at home for Auburn, and Auburn has one of the best home field advantages in the SEC. Auburn could potentially be 4-0. Under no circumstances can they be worse than 3-1 coming out of those first 4 games, though. Those are 4 of the easier games on their schedule. You look at the next ones after that. Oklahoma. Oklahoma right now looks like a better team than Auburn. At Georgia. Georgia right now looks like a better team than Auburn. These 2 teams play every year, and Georgia has absolutely dominated them in the 21st century. I think Auburn is something like 3-19 against Georgia in the last 22 meetings. And again, they play every year. Then they get a bye week, but coming out of the bye week, they have back-to-back road games at Missouri and at Kentucky. If we're going to give Auburn the benefit of the doubt on this schedule and say it's possible they start 4-0 with wins against Alabama A&M, Cal, New Mexico, and Arkansas, if we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt on those 4 and say it's possible they beat them all, we got to be realistic and say it's also possible they lose the next 4. Oklahoma, Georgia, Missouri, and Kentucky. Now, I think what's more likely to happen with a team like Auburn is that they probably lose one of their first 4 games, and they probably win one of those next 4, either Oklahoma, Georgia, Missouri, or Kentucky, right? They're probably hovering somewhere around 500 coming out of those first 8 games. Then they get a break when they host Vandy, and it's been fun to laugh at Auburn the last few years because one of the weirdest stats in all of college football, but definitely within the SEC, that just blows people's mind when they hear it. Auburn and Vanderbilt are tied all time. I think Auburn might be up on them by 1 now. And they haven't just played 2 or 3 times. These are SEC teams that have played 20, 30, 40-something times. I think it's 30-something times, actually. And until recently, the series was tied 50-50. I think Auburn is up on them by 1 game now. But that shouldn't have anything to do with this year. Auburn should get that win there. Another bye week. Come out of the bye week. Going to have to beat ULM, obviously, because you closed the season out with Texas A&M and Alabama. You get Texas A&M at home. That Texas A&M game might be the difference between Auburn making a bowl game or not. Or, 7-5, 6-6, 5-7. It's going to be hovering around there. Hard to imagine Auburn winning on the road at Bama. I know it was close last year, but if you know anything about the history of the Iron Bowl, especially the last 20 years, at Auburn has been a tricky needle to thread for Alabama. But Bama gets them at home. So when you, again, to try to answer the question, are they going to be better than last year? Payton Thorne's got to play better. That's number one. They've got to have some sort of passing. They've got to be able to convert some 3rd and 8s. They just have to. They just cannot abandon the pass like they did last year. Again, 3-4 games in a row last season where they failed to throw for 100 yards. You just cannot survive that way in modern college football. So Payton Thorne's got to get better. The offense as a whole has to take a step forward in year 2 under Hugh Freeze's system. They're going to have to get, I think, some of those freshmen are going to have to contribute at a high level early on. And they're going to have some catch. They're going to have to catch some breaks here with maybe some wins you don't expect them to get. So 6-6 last year. Can they improve on that this year? Let's say they start 3-1. Okay, just pick any random game here in the first 4 that they lose. Then let's say they only win one of the next 4 against Oklahoma, Georgia, Missouri, and Kentucky. That would put them at 4-4. That would put them at 4-4. Vandy would put them at 5 wins. ULM would put them at 6 wins. Texas A&M, Alabama, 6-6 is what it. So I can't remember what the Vegas odds are. Let's look them up. What was the Vegas win total for Auburn? I know I did a video on the SEC win totals, but now that I need to remember it, I can't. Let's see if I can pull that up real quick. My guess is that Auburn's overall win total is 5.5 or 6.5, somewhere in there. Let's see. Here it is right here. Auburn. No, that's Kentucky. Oklahoma. Auburn. 7.5. Projected wins for Auburn, 7.5. Ooh. Ay. Can we find, if you think Auburn's going over 7.5, that means you got to find 8 wins. 1, 2, 3, 4. They'd have to start 4-0. They probably got to beat one of the next 4 teams. That would get them to 5 wins. Vandy would be 6. ULM would be 7. And then they would have to upset either Texas A&M or I'm taking under. I don't see 8 wins here for Auburn. Again, Hugh Freeze, massive improvement over Harsin. Quarterback play needs to be better. Younger players going to have to step up. Payton Thorne going to have to play better. And they're going to have to catch some breaks on this. I don't see 8. I don't see 8-4 though. If the over/under is 7.5, I would take the under and say, a good season would be 7-5. I don't see them getting 8-4. Anyway, let me know what you think down below, and try to have a good morning if you can.